Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. You shouldn't have taken the pills, the doctor said. That sentence wasn't meant for me. It wasn't even meant to be heard by anyone outside that door. But I heard it. Every syllable. Clear as day. And once I did, I couldn't unhear it. It all started 7 days earlier, though now I wonder if it started much further back. That morning, my wife and her mother returned from a spontaneous, spiritual escape, a phrase they both used with unconvincing smiles. They'd been away for 5 days, some mountain town I wasn't even invited to, which apparently had no cell signal and no men allowed. That part didn't bother me at first. I've been the background character in their little duo for years. But something was wrong when they came back. They looked polished. Too polished. Like the kind of calm that feels staged. Like they had practiced their entrance before knocking on our own door. They dropped their bags in the hallway. Brielle, my wife, gave me a side glance, not even a kiss. Dolores, her mother, offered a hug that lasted 1 second too long, and then immediately asked where the mail was. No, missed you. No, how've you been? Not even a fake compliment about the clean house. Then came the appointment. They said it was preventative wellness. Said it was just a routine checkup after their detox retreat. I didn't question it. I never do. That's part of the problem, isn't it? But I went anyway. They didn't expect that. I said I'd drive. Dolores's husband, Ernie, decided to tag along too. It felt like a weird double date into awkward silence. We sat there, the two of us, in the waiting room. Him flipping through a Bass Pro Shops catalog, me pretending to check my phone while secretly watching the hallway. Then came the doctor. He didn't see us sitting around the corner. He was speaking softly to the nurse behind the check-in desk. He had a chart in one hand, and his other hand was rubbing his temple like the conversation had already drained him. She's stable now, he said. But the pregnancy terminated. Judging from the lab results, it wasn't spontaneous. There are traces of mifepristone. The nurse's eyes widened. So did mine. I looked at Ernie. He hadn't moved, but his hand had gripped the catalog so tight it was crumpling. Pregnancy. Terminated. Pills. Brielle and I had been trying for a year, with no luck. At least, that's what she told me. All those ovulation trackers. All those nights, she said she was too tired. All the disappointment on her face when the tests came back negative. And now this. Suddenly, the silence between us all these months didn't seem like distance. It felt like planning. The drive home from the clinic was the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. Brielle sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, staring out the window like we were strangers in a rideshare. Dolores was in the back, sipping water like she hadn't just emerged from a storm of secrets. I had a million questions swirling in my head, none of which made it to my mouth. I've always been conflict avoidant, which is a polite way of saying I let people walk all over me if it keeps the peace. But this felt like more than just a misunderstanding. There was something happening behind the scenes, and I wasn't just out of the loop. I was being actively kept in the dark. When we got home, Brielle went straight to the shower. Dolores stayed behind in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through her phone. I stood by the sink, pouring myself water I didn't need. The silence between us started to vibrate. I finally asked her, "Is there something I should know?" She didn't even flinch, just looked up slowly and said, "Ellis, not everything has to be your business." Then she smiled like she was being kind. I didn't know what to say. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed while Brielle snored softly behind me, and I stared at the faint light from the hallway creeping under our door. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Had she cheated? Was the pregnancy hers? Did she go on that trip to hide it? Or worse, to end it? The most confusing part was that I didn't feel angry. I felt erased, like I had become a placeholder in my own marriage. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I opened her drawer looking for a nail clipper. I'm not proud of it, but I wasn't snooping, at least not at first. But when I moved aside a hairbrush, I found a folded envelope labeled Dr. Naresh, final script. Inside was a receipt for a telehealth consultation dated 3 weeks before the trip. 3 weeks. And then a pamphlet. Emergency contraception versus medical termination. What to know? My heart dropped. My knees buckled. I actually sat down on the floor like I'd been punched. I hadn't touched my wife in over a month. So why had she consulted a doctor about that before leaving town? That night, I told her I found the envelope. She didn't even deny it. She just stood there in her towel, dripping water on the carpet, and said, I did what I had to do. It wasn't your child, Ellis. The way she said it, flat, tired, like I'd asked what was for dinner, was what broke me. I whispered, was it someone from the trip? She turned to walk away. Don't make this more dramatic than it needs to be. But it already was. I just didn't know how much worse it could still get. I couldn't eat the next morning. I barely slept. Every sound in the house felt exaggerated, like the floor creaks were mocking me. I replayed Brielle's exact words over and over again in my head. It wasn't your child. That phrase, so cold, so final, had tunneled into my thoughts like a splinter I couldn't pull out. I kept wondering how long she had known, how long she had kept this secret buried behind passive smiles and hollow routines. Had I really been that blind? Or had she gotten better at hiding? Later that afternoon, I went outside under the pretense of cleaning the garage, but I just sat on a broken lawn chair staring at the inside of my own head. That's when Ernie, my father-in-law, showed up, unannounced. He walked right into the garage like he had something to say, but didn't know where to start. He stood beside me for a full minute before finally muttering, "You heard the doctor, didn't you?" I nodded. He let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years and said, "I told Dolores to stay out of it. But she never listens. She's always inserting herself into things that don't belong to her." I blinked. Wait, are you saying she knew? He rubbed his forehead, avoiding my eyes. She orchestrated the whole thing. Booked the appointments, planned the trip. I think she thought she was protecting Brielle. Or maybe protecting herself. I don't even know anymore. My throat tightened. Protecting her from what? He paused again, then said, "You're not the only one who didn't know about the affair." My stomach dropped. So it was true. It wasn't paranoia. There was someone else. I had suspected, but I never had anything concrete. And now I was standing in a dim garage, listening to my wife's father confess that her mother knew about her infidelity, maybe even helped cover it up. "Do you know who it was?" I asked, barely able to form the words. He hesitated. "All I know is that it wasn't just some fling. It's been going on longer than you think. Months, maybe more." I leaned forward, holding my head in my hands, trying to slow down my spinning thoughts. My life wasn't unraveling anymore. It had already unraveled, and I was just now seeing the threads. Why wouldn't they just tell me? I whispered. "Because," Ernie said quietly, "you were never supposed to find out. Dolores thinks you're too soft. Said you'd fall apart." Guess she wasn't wrong. And the worst part? He was absolutely right. I didn't know what was worse, finding out my wife had been unfaithful, or realizing that everyone around me had quietly accepted it long before I even caught on. For the next few days, I drifted through the house like a ghost, pretending to exist in a version of life that no longer felt like mine. Brielle acted as if everything was normal. She folded laundry. She made toast. She hummed in the shower like someone who didn't just blow a hole through the middle of our marriage. I wanted to scream, to beg for the truth, to demand answers. But instead, I mowed the lawn. I emptied the dishwasher. I smiled when she handed me coffee, like the mug didn't feel like a cruel joke. On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until she left for work, then did something I swore I'd never do. I went into her email. I know. It's the worst kind of violation, and I hated myself for even hovering over the login screen. But I had to know. I had to stop being the only idiot in the house who didn't know what was really going on. The inbox was clean, suspiciously clean, but tucked away in the drafts folder was a single unsent email. No subject, just a name, Marcel. I clicked. The message was short, unfinished, but sharp enough to cut skin. It read, "I'm scared he knows something. I can't lie to him forever, and the clinic was a wake-up call. I can't keep pretending this didn't mean something. Please don't call me unless it's urgent. I'll text when it's safe." That word, safe, rattled through my brain like an alarm bell. Safe from what? From me? I've never laid a hand on her. I barely raised my voice. But that's the thing, isn't it? They think quiet men are weak. They think silence is surrender. That night, while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and whispered his name over and over like some twisted prayer. Marcel. 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 I needed to know who he was. I needed to see his face. But more than that, I needed to understand how my wife could plan a life around deceiving me so effortlessly. The next morning, I confronted her with the draft. Her eyes widened for half a second, then she shrugged. I was going to delete it. That was all. Like it was an old shopping list she forgot to toss. I asked her who Marcel was. She hesitated. Then, without blinking, said, "You don't know him. He's not from here." And just like that, she grabbed her purse and left for work. No explanation. No apology. Just poof. Gone. And me? I was still standing in the kitchen, holding the pieces of a story I didn't even understand the beginning of. I spent that entire day pacing the house, barely able to keep still. The name Marcel echoed in my head like a chant I didn't want but couldn't stop. I searched everything. Her social media, our shared cloud storage, old text backups, anything that might give me a clue who this man was. But it was like he didn't exist. There were no tagged photos, no messages, no mentions, not even in her call logs. I didn't know whether to feel insulted or impressed. She'd buried him deep. And the more I looked, the more paranoid I became. Every glance she'd ever stolen at her phone, every late night she blamed on insomnia, every time she laughed at a message she forgot to share with me, it all began to swirl together into one suffocating realization: I'd been living with a stranger. By nightfall, I was so far down the rabbit hole I didn't notice the garage camera until I was searching through our home security app, hoping, praying, for something out of place. And there it was, the day before the trip. A man I didn't recognize stood in our driveway at 11:14 a.m., wearing sunglasses and leaning against a dark green SUV. Brielle walked out with her overnight bag, hugged him, and got in the car. No hesitation. No glance back. She never said she was being picked up. She told me Dolores was driving. That same night, I asked her calmly, too calmly, who had picked her up. She lied. "Mom." "Why?" I just nodded, saving the video silently on my phone. I didn't show it to her. I couldn't. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go. I wanted to see if she was even capable of telling the truth. The next morning, I went to Dolores's house. I didn't call first. She opened the door wearing a silk robe and that same smug expression she always gave me when she thought I was out of my depth. I asked her directly, "Who's Marcel?" She blinked, paused, then said the most chilling thing I've ever heard. "If you love Brielle, you'll pretend you never asked that." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stared at her like she'd turned into another person. I turned to leave, but she stopped me with one final jab. "Ellis, not all women want husbands who cry when things get hard. Maybe ask yourself why she needed Marcel in the first place." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room staring at the paused frame of that video. The SUV, the hug, the lie. Everything inside me wanted to scream. But all I could do was whisper her name into the silence, wondering when exactly she had stopped being my wife and started being someone else's secret. I thought I'd reached the bottom of this mess, until I found the burner phone. It was in the lining of Brielle's suitcase, tucked behind a flap I'd never noticed before. I wasn't looking for it, not exactly. I had opened the bag to air it out, hoping maybe the scent of that trip would tell me something her words never did. But when my fingers brushed against the edge of something hard beneath the fabric, and I pulled the tiny black phone out, my heart nearly stopped. It was cheap, scratched, and powered off. No fingerprint ID, no facial recognition. Just a pin. I stared at it for half an hour before trying the only code I could think of: our anniversary. It worked. My stomach turned. The phone unlocked, and what I saw wasn't overwhelming in quantity, but in meaning. 3 contacts, all with initials: M.D. and J. I recognized D immediately. Dolores. Her mother. J could have been anyone. But M? I didn't have to guess. The most recent message on the phone wasn't even old. It had been sent just 2 days earlier. It read, "He's unraveling. I can't keep the act much longer. We need to talk face to face." That was it. No context. No reply. But then I noticed the call history. 2 missed calls from M. One from the morning she told me she was running errands, and one while I was standing right next to her the night before. I remember that night. Her phone had buzzed, and she glanced at it quickly, then turned it face down. She said it was just spam. It wasn't. I didn't sleep. I kept the phone under my pillow like it might whisper the truth to me in my dreams. The next morning, I confronted her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just placed the burner on the table between us like a dead bird dropped at someone's feet. She stared at it for a full 10 seconds, then quietly asked, "How much did you see?" Not, "That's not mine." Not, "Where did you get that?" Just pure, flat damage control. I told her everything, except the anniversary pin. I wanted to keep one card close. She didn't argue, didn't confess, didn't deny. Instead, she stood up, walked to the sink, poured herself a glass of water, and said, "You don't want to know everything, Ellis. You think you do, but you don't." And then she added, "If you push this, it won't just ruin us. It'll ruin more than you're prepared for." I asked, like what? She didn't answer. She just walked upstairs like we'd been talking about the weather. And somehow, that scared me more than any of her lies ever had. The next 2 days blurred into one long stretch of avoidance and second-guessing. Brielle walked around the house like nothing had happened, humming while folding laundry, scrolling endlessly on her phone, even asking me if I wanted to try that new Thai place she'd mentioned months ago, as if the truth hadn't already ripped the floor out from under us. I kept up the act, too afraid to ask more, too shaken to leave, too desperate to know what ruin more than you're prepared for actually meant. But I couldn't stop looking at that burner phone. It sat inside my desk drawer, powered off, taunting me every time I passed by. That night, curiosity got the better of me again. I opened the photo gallery. Only one image was saved. No dates, no tags, just one picture, and it changed everything. It was a selfie. Brielle. Her hair was messier than usual, a soft smile on her lips. But she wasn't alone. Marcel was in the background, shirtless, half asleep, wrapped in a hotel sheet. I recognized the room instantly. It was the boutique in Asheville she said she and her mom were obsessed with. She had even shown me their website before booking. She told me they got the last double room. But there he was, in the same room she said she shared with her mother. I stared at the image until my vision blurred, not from the resolution, just from rage and heartbreak taking turns tightening my chest. I wanted to confront her again, scream, throw something, finally be loud. But something in me stopped. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. I needed proof. Undeniable, timed, traceable proof. So I printed the photo. Just one copy. Folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and hid it in the glove compartment of my car. That was going to be my line in the sand. If she denied it again, if she fed me one more lie, I'd slide that envelope across the table and watch her world unravel like she had done to mine. The next morning, Brielle was already gone when I woke up. Her car was gone. No note. No text. But my gut twisted the moment I stepped outside. The glove compartment was open. The envelope was gone. And taped to the steering wheel was a yellow post-it note in her handwriting. "You don't know how to stop, Ellis. But you should have." That's when I realized I wasn't in control anymore. And maybe I never had been. I spent hours just sitting in the driver's seat, staring at that sticky note like it was a final exam I hadn't studied for. "You don't know how to stop, Ellis. But you should have." It wasn't a confession or even a warning. It was a dare. And for the first time in my life, I didn't back down. I drove straight to Dolores's house. And as soon as she opened the door, I told her everything. About the burner phone, the selfie, the hidden messages, even the envelope that disappeared from my glove box. She didn't look surprised. Not even a flicker. "She's gone," she said, like it was just a line from a grocery list. She needed a clean exit. I told her you wouldn't let go easily. And that's when it hit me. Dolores wasn't just complicit. She was the architect. The trip, the clinic, the silence, she orchestrated it all. "Why?" I asked. My voice cracked like glass. She simply said, "Because you don't fight, Ellis." And she needed someone who would. I turned and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw her. Brielle didn't come back. Not that week, not that month. But I didn't fall apart like they thought I would. I started therapy. I got serious about work again. I reconnected with my brother in Oregon. Even took a road trip just to remember what it felt like to move forward. And strangely, I feel lighter. Not healed, not perfect, but real. I still think about that moment in the clinic when it all began, when the truth slipped out in a whisper not meant for me. I used to wish I hadn't heard it. Now, I'm grateful I did. Because sometimes the only way out of a fake life is through a very real heartbreak. And I made it through. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your world is cracking, let it. Sometimes things fall apart just so you finally stop pretending. Thanks for sticking with me. It's been a ride. Now it's your turn. What moment in this story hit you the hardest? Was it the burner phone? The picture? The note? Drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. This is Reddit Confessions, where the truth always finds a way out.